Welcome back to Allison Customs Project Car TV. I'm Jeff Allison, and thank you for watching.
Hello guys, welcome back to Allison Customs Project Car TV again. And today we're starting on something for the Mustang. I've been promising it for months, and finally have all the parts. I got started laying out. I built myself a jig. That's kind of what I got set up here in front of me and on this table. And I've already got my first two bushing collars put into these jigs, or into these mounts here. And the next thing is, and I'll bring the camera over and show you a little in depth, but I've put them on the mill there and milled in a recess, and I got to get these threaded studs for adjusters welded onto the collars. I've already taken the rubber bushings, or they're actually polyurethane bushings, out, and I put just a sleeve in there. But it still lets me roll it around as I get ready. So I'll get these welded on, and then they'll lay down like so. And like I said, I'll bring the camera over and show you a little better picture of everything. But okay, so what we've got is just a piece of DOM tubing that's sized to fit the polyurethane bushings that go inside there. Like I said, I put it on the mill, knocked down a little flat spot, and kind of turn that so you can see what I'm talking about, well, when the sun's not right on it. And then these studs are made to just sit right on there, and then we're going to weld them on, make sure they're good and straight. I got another one over there, and you'll notice, or maybe you can notice, so I've got this whole piece of steel here. Move the TIG torch out of the way. Got this whole piece of steel here with markings and numbers on it and everything. Come around this other side. So from this other side, you can see, so this piece and the one on the other side here are both removable. They're welded on, but I just got to cut the weld off, and then I can move them. And so right now it's set up to be the right front. All I got to do is cut those welds, swap their locations, and then it's set up. And then I've got to move. See, way up here at the front, I've got a ball ring collar, and I'll take that apart and show you what I've got there. But I'll swap them. You can see real close here. They're actually at two different heights. One's actually built on a piece of 3-inch flat bar, and this closer one is built on a piece of 2-inch, and that's to build the suspension geometry into the A-arm. So now you can see that little collar a little better. Take that apart and show you. But so I can cut these welds loose, swap their places, and move the collar to the other side of the center line, and then it's set up for a left lower. Plan to leave them set up like this, and then I'll either get another piece of steel or just flip this one over and draw my upper arms on the other side, and then I've got a pattern that I can keep for as long as I need to, as far as getting the car running and making sure I got the geometry the way I like it. So let me show you how that ball joint kit works. So what I've got here is a screw-in ball joint, and this piece is actually going to just be sacrificial. It's where the ball joint goes inside it and holds the stem. And then this just screws into this collar, and you set your depth. Well, as you can see, it protrudes through just a little bit, so what I've been doing is just recessing it. But the nice thing with that little bit of area, that gives you some adjustability if you missed on your math a little bit when you were laying out your jig here. If you missed a little bit, you could adjust that ball joint height, that collar's height, and pretty quickly have yourself back into measurement. I guess I can show you here. I welded a little piece of it's a piece of tubing on there, so that thing just slides right in. I know exactly where it's going to go, and I'm just using a piece of scrap steel here on top to make sure it doesn't move around. So let's get started doing some TIG welding. You guys are wondering why my TIG rod's all bent up in weird shapes. For any of you who watch some of the roll bar installation videos I've done, all this TIG rod was, some of it at least, was used for that or other projects where I was making forms out of it. Good thing is when you're done with that, it still really works just fine for welding. Throw this blanket over this first one, keep myself from laying my arm on it, burning myself real bad. And it's leaning a little bit to my left, so I'm going to attack the right hand side. See if we can get it to pull just that way, just a tiny bit. So 100% adjustability would be if that was able to sit like that. So, alright, so with that part done, drill bit out. Put that in there real light. Get this spinning again. go ahead and pull it out. And there you have it. We were about that deep. Alright, so we were about that deep, and if this was sitting in there, see if I can get both of those in one thing. You can see pretty much as deep as the drill could go, and where I thought I'd probably drilled too deep, I guess by the time it really had the taper on the end and everything, it was probably about right, actually. Well, that tells me they're good. I'm not going to run it all the way in there. Now that we got the threads in there, that's all cleaned up. Next thing we want to do, runs nice and straight. So, what I want to do is come off and come into the collar there. Okay, so what I think I want to do is put a bend pretty late in it. Probably right in this area right here. That'd be about the center of the bend, and then have it turn in so that when I notch this tube, it's completely on the collar before we get to where my brace is there, that little piece of tubing that's holding it in place. And that's about the center of that collar. So I'd like everything just inside the center there, or inside that line. So that's the direction I'm going to go. Now what I've got right now is I ran this tube all the way down, and that would eliminate half my my adjustability. So I'm going to, now that I know about where the threads end on here, I'm going to mark those. I'm going to take this tube back off, measure how much thread went in, and I'm going to adjust it to about half of that. Alright, and based on other stuff I built and used, I know I need about at least 8 inches in here. Much less than 8 inches. When you start turning everything in, you end up getting it, everything gets pretty tight in here. So I'm going to get at least, we're going to mark off 8, and 8 inches is measured from the bushing here. So there's 8 inches, there's 10 inches, there's 12 inches. Now the next measurement I know I need is I need at least 5 inches. You don't need a lot more than 5, but at least 5 inches from your collar back to the bar on that turn. And that's to leave enough room for an airbag or a coilover spring or whatever kind of suspension. If you're going to be using big airbags, you need to leave a little more space in here. And the way you do that is you start running up further. So you'd go 8, 10, 12, you might even go to 14 inches and make this turn real sharp so that you're leaving as big an open area in here as possible. Okay, so I'm going to be using a coilover airbag type deal. There's a couple different brands out there, but most common would be like Ride-Tech makes. And so I think I'm going to use the 10-inch point to start my bend. And then I want the bend, let me turn this on and zero it out. And this has got an angle finder in it. And for right this second, let me take this out of the way. Like I said, one thing you got to watch when you start measuring for bends is always work from one side of the tubing or the center of the tubing. Don't switch back and forth. I'm going to work from the side of the tubing closest to the camera, and I know I want my tube notched fully in by the time I get up here right at that halfway point. So I can line this up with the tubing, I can line up my angle where I want it, and I know that's the outside of the bend all the way around. So I know I want my bend, if it starts at the 10, with my particular set of dies, you have to add about the thickness of the tubing. So in this case, it's a little over 1 inch of tubing. So I'm going to put my center of my bend right here, just about between the two, the 10 and the 12. I'm going about 11 inches. I'm going to line up this side with the outside of the tubing. Get this one to the point where I want the outside of the tubing to hit the collar. And about there. Maybe a little further out. All right, I'm at 148 degrees and 149. I like that. I'm going to go with 149 degrees. So let me write that down on here. 149 degrees. Now that 149 degrees, that's my note to remind me when I move all this stuff over to make the driver's side, I know, hey, this one's got to be a 149 degree bend. And take 149 and subtract that from 80, or excuse me, 149 and subtract it from 180, leaves you 31 degrees. So when we're bending the tube, we're going to bend a 31 degree bend. So now we can take this off. And we can go to the tubing bender. Okay guys, so I've got my tubing in the bender here. The pointer's set to 0. And I know the spring back on mine I need to add about 5 degrees. So we're going to go to 36 degrees. And it doesn't matter which way we don't have to have the tubing oriented in any one direction because we're only putting one bend in it. So tighten the valve, and this is kind of noisy, but here we go. There's 36 degrees. There we go. So we started the bend at the 10 degree, and it's almost full in there by 11, maybe 11 and a quarter. So let's go see how it fits. Quick reference, you can get a pretty good idea. It's going to lay right in there exactly where we were hoping for. It's going to come in, get this straight. It's going to flare in right on the collar, right where I was hoping. Straight again. And we know it's basically straight across on the bottom and straight across on the top, or what would actually be the inside and back edges of that. And then it's going to curve pretty gentle right back to that. Alright, let's cut it. I've got the angle just about dead on. You can see there's some extra meat in there right now, so I'm going to take a flap wheel now and clean that out a little bit. Still turns in a little. What I'm looking for is to keep the angle the same. And right now, with it sitting on top of this rod, it comes in, it's nice, you know, obviously it's a straight line to there, and then it dives off a little bit. So I've got too much the angle pointed downhill. I need to find some happy medium between this, where it's still kind of aiming uphill, Okay, I'm going to let all this cool for a little while. And while I'm letting that cool, and then so that I can flip it over and weld the other side without it wanting to pull away. Right now it's nice and tight, jigged up. While that's cooling, need to get a second tube ready so I can cut threads in it. So I've got to put it on the lathe, drill it out, then tap the threads in it, bring it over, cut it off, notch it, make it all fit. So it's going to take a while. You've now seen me how to do how I'm doing them. So I'll go get that other one ready, and when I get ready to weld it, I'll bring you back. Yesterday I got these braces, or the two bars, welded up to the collar. Since then I've finished welding that, and I went ahead and added 2 links of material here over the area that was threaded, just to add strength back, because by the time I drilled that out for 5/8, or excuse me, 11/16, drilled it out 11/16 and then tapped it for 3/4 inch threads, you know, I'd eaten up quite a bit of the material there, so I just felt like adding some material at least can't hurt. And the last thing I've got going on is I bent up this little bar, and it's just a cross member for in here, and so I'm going to get it tacked on this side, and then I'll square it up with my center line here, and as soon as that's all tacked in, and I'm just going to leave this tacked for now because I put the bend in it so it would clear a cross member, and I haven't built the cross member yet, so I'm just kind of guessing at how much I need. But I wanted to show you how to get it done. Later on there'll be one more bar somewhere up in here, and that bar will be for the shock, the lower shock mount, coilover mount to come into. So there'll be a bar, and I plan to just have like 2 pieces come through. I've got the other collar under there. Anyway, piece on each side come through, and then the shock being in the middle, and then run a bolt the full length across it. So see how that goes. So Let me get my TIG started up and we'll tack this in. I like it. Just looking at it, looks square, and as best I could measure, it's square. So we're gonna leave that to cool again, and tomorrow, because it's getting late in the evening now. Tomorrow I will run my bushing mounts back in it and run a ball joint in it, and we'll test fit it to the car. Thanks for watching. I'll post some pictures with it up mounted on the car just so you can see how we did. And we'll have to add this other bar, but that'll be after we get our upper shock mount and everything else built so that we know exactly where we want it to hit to get the right angle. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope it helps if you're trying to figure out how to do something like that yourself. Okay, so here we have everything's cooled off. I installed the ball joint and got the bushings run back in and adjusted roughly where they're supposed to be. Give you an idea of what the swing arm or the A-arm looks like. This bar up here is just there. I've got a plate welded or bolted onto the back of the spindle. And that's so I could set my spindle location when I was doing all my measurements and everything. So with that in place, this slides right up in there and means I got it all right, I guess. Give you an overview shot here, and you can kind of see what the purpose of this other cross member is, because eventually there'll have to be a cross member that goes underneath, basically under the engine cradle somewhere, and so this will swing down then and let it clear whatever I end up building.
Thanks for watching Allison Customs Project Car TV. Like us on Facebook and check us out at AllisonCustomsOnline.com.